Hey. Oh, yay, the sound works. See where we're at. Sure. You don't have any feedback? All right, guys, welcome, welcome. We are here for the first ever book signing at BronxWitch HeadQuarters. This is the private chat portion of this event. We are going to be treated to some intimate time with the author of The Evil Eye, Antonio Pagliarulo. He is going to be doing a reading from the book, The Evil Eye, recently released from Wiser, taking some questions. And I'm actually doing private readings for everybody who is here in the space, which is really, really wonderful. So we'll be microphoning Antonio so that you guys can hear all of the things that he shares, but then I'll be taking the microphone off so that folks' readings can be private. Okay, so we're gonna go put the sound on to Antonio, and we'll be back in just a second.
I'm so mad at how much I agree with that.
I've had to.
Are you logged into the live? Would you mind going into Thinkific?
That's exactly right. Well, no, me like yeah. Right. I understand.
Okay. Can you turn your sound on and see if you can hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Check, check, check. All right, awesome. Thank you. Can you see? You can see me twice, right?
words, you know, until the moon turns dark. That, you know, it was supposed to be dark, and I was born during the volcanic moon.
I think I was born like right after or like before. So I was born
Yeah.
like in the hour. I was born right after midnight. So it was like right at the time. It was on a Friday.
It was on a Friday. See, I was on Monday, but it was the dark moon. And he said to my mother, and if he's born on the 12th or the 13th, you know, you have to name him Antonio, because the 13th is the feast day of St. Anthony of Padua, which is he's a big saint. And so I came with the name, as my mother says. But yeah, he used to do things, everything was by the moon. His wine he used to make according to the moon, the planting the moon. He would move it up on a shelf according to the moon. And they're all fascinating things that, you know, we've lost a lot of. Yeah.
Preparing any type of like ritual
Mhm.
stuff that I'm crafting. I have to like, well, not have to, but I usually follow. So
The moonology.
everything takes me like 4 to 6 weeks because I have to like every 2 weeks I have to work the phase to bring it.
But the moonology is real about things. I mean, that's why when I hear people say things like, and it depends, I guess a lot of people have different ideas about the magic and stuff like that, but people have come to me and said like, oh, they're going to banish something on the full moon. And I'm like, no, they want to like banish something from the full moon. They're like,
Good luck.
yeah, I'm like, don't do
I
that. Like,
mean, I thought that was for bringing things to the surface.
right,
but-
like a lot of people, it's a different, everyone, different ideas, but the older ways are fascinating to see different, because I've had friends who are also, you know, their grandparents are from like Eastern Europe or here, and they have different, slightly different things to, you know, about the planting and the pagan stuff. It's just fascinating to hear it. And hear it.
I'm gonna get something down.
And turn this off.
We have a few more private checks and folders. We're probably on their way, so a few folks might settle in behind us as we get started. But I just wanted to get us going and say hello, welcome everyone. I'm BronxWitch. This is my shop, and I'm really blessed to have you all here. We opened up in October of 2021, so we're coming up on 2 years. Woo! We're so excited. It is our mission of all things magical, mystical, and in the Bronx to be a resource and a space for the spiritual and magical community. We have products, we have services, but probably most importantly, we have classes and events like this. Opportunities for us to connect, get to know each other, to meet, to learn and grow together. So I'm so grateful to have you all here. I'm extra grateful to have Antonio Pagliarulo here in the building.
Thank you. Back in the Bronx, not that I need that much. Live in the city, but I come back every other day. Bronx.
Yes. Don Antonio is an author and the child of South Italian immigrants and a Bronx native, a writer, a witch, a mystic, and just a wonderful voice in our community, especially in New York City and here in the Bronx. If you don't know Antonio's face and you have not been witching enough, there, because Antonio is someone that we all know and love. And this book is absolutely fantastic. We're so excited and honored that you would start off your tour of book signings and things of that nature to promote this book here in the Bronx. And here at BronxWitch HeadQuarters, because the evil eye is something that I think that most folks of the Bronx, no matter what your background is, are familiar with. So many of us come from cultural backgrounds where the evil eye is understood, it's prevalent, it might be called something different, but the concept of unintentional harm coming your way as a result of folks' bad intentions is something that we pretty much have all understood through all human history. But knowing how to identify it, knowing what to do about it, that's when things are like, oh, what do I do? We come to Antonio.
We learn too. Yeah.
Who is going to give us research information, but also firsthand information from his experiences growing up in a house where Italian book magic was prevalent and practiced and fairly normal, fairly run of the mill, right? So a really wonderful background to share with us. So I'm so grateful. I'm gonna hand it over to Antonio to say a few words about himself and say hello. And then Antonio's gonna treat us to a reading of the introduction and the epilogue of the book that I think really give all of us a really great idea of where you come from, your relationship to this verse, and also what we can do and how we should use this book to help ourselves as we go on. Okay, and then we'll open it up to some questions from you guys before we get into the evil eye readings that Antonio has so kindly offered to you guys. So I will turn it over to Antonio.
Thank you, thank you, Allie. I don't think, thank you. I couldn't do a better introduction, and I don't know how I can top that. But yes, as Ali said, my book, The Evil Eye, I was raised here in the Bronx. A lot of my family, my mother, my father still live here in the Bronx. My aunt still lives here in the Bronx. So we hear very often. My husband and I live in Manhattan. We're here all the time. So the Bronx, as you know, never leaves you. So to be back here, to be here at BronxWitch HeadQuarters really is, it means so much to me to be here, to do this in this wonderful, wonderful, magical space. If you have not been here, what I can tell you, those of us who are magical practitioners, and even if you're not a magical practitioner, a lot of people sense energy. You can understand it, you can feel it. If you know your intuition, you get it. If you have not been here, you're missing out on something. And I encourage you to be here because you can feel the magic that's happening here when you walk in, and you can feel it settle into you, and you will take it with you, and it will bring you back. That much I can tell you. So it's a complete circle. I've only been here a very short time today, but already I can tell you I'm trying to push away this idea that I have to leave at some point. So I don't know. I might pitch a tent or something and stay here. I don't know. We'll see. But yes, I'm going to open up. I'm going to read to you from the introduction here. You guys got it? And anything, if I'm reading and there are questions or anything like that, if you want me to stop, it's very informal and you can interrupt me, you can say whatever, even though we'll have questions afterwards, please just feel free to say whatever you want to say. Did I forget anything? I don't think so. Just that, so the evil eye, I explained it in the book. It's an old concept. Many people think the evil eye is new. I've gotten a lot of emails and comments from people who said, oh, I've never heard of this, or I've never, did you sort of find this somewhere? Did you come up with it? No. It's an old concept. Historians and scholars will tell you that it goes back to at least ancient Egypt, where the eye symbolism was huge. It was painted on boats, on coffins, to ensure safe passage for the afterlife. It has a long history, but it also goes back to Mesopotamia. And I think in 1938, there was an archaeological dig where and it's called like the Eye Temple. And they pulled out these little figurines with incised eyes and at Telbrock. And it's, incredible to know that all the way back then, this thought was there. And why was it there? I tell people because the evil eye is about emotion. It starts with human emotion. It is jealousy, it is envy, it is greed, it is anger. We have all experienced those emotions. We have all been on the receiving end of those emotions. So there's no one who is exempt from this idea of the evil eye because we are here and we all feel it. We've all sensed it. Also, don't forget that way back when also, today we have the theory of intromission. That's how we know that how sight is accomplished, okay, scientifically. But back when it was extramission, people believed that there was an energy that actually came out of your eyes, that, your eyes emitted this energy and they kind of were like these little sting or these tendrils that kind of latched onto something. And so there was a belief very much that sight was accomplished that way. And when you think about it in those terms, you can understand why people thought the eyes were so powerful because they emitted energy and that you have enough anger, you have enough envy, you have enough greed, that's going to hurt somebody. So whether or not, and there have been scientific experiments done, I think I do mention one in the book about people who have measured energy that has been emitted from the eyes. And it's interesting to see. There has to be a lot more scientific research if it's ever done, but it's an interesting concept if you think about it. Is it possible that our eyes can emit energy? I don't know. Think about it. When I tell you about the sense of being stared at, a wonderful book. You should look that book up. That's the title of it. And the whole point is, if you think of yourself standing around, have you ever looked up and gone, you turn around and you find someone staring at you. How did you know that? Or have you ever been anywhere and you kind of say, oh, that's him, that's her, that's your friend or the ex or the cousin, or you don't want them to see you staring, so you get behind the column, you get behind the wall, you look, you hide, and then they turn around from, 50 feet away. how did they know you were there? It's because they felt you staring. Those are interesting things. And also, in the book that I referenced, The Sense of Being Stared at, there's a whole lot of thing with predator-prey relationships, how the predator and the prey sort of know through this idea about the eyes when they're being watched, when there might be an attack that's prevalent. It's not as often you think about hearing a leaf rustles and there, no, it's a lot about feeling someone staring at you. And so that's just a little bit of very basic history about the evil eye. And I'm going to go in here and start the introduction. And so you will get a better idea of things here. So I'm going to start here. So when I was a kid growing up in the Bronx, I didn't think there was anything unusual about my grandmother's kitchen. Pots were always simmering on the stovetop, and the aroma of garlic and oregano permeated the air from dawn to dusk. What I remember most vividly was the curious arrangement on the counter beside the sink, a bowl filled with water, flanked by a spoon and a bottle of olive oil. I have a bottle of olive oil down here. The water never found its way into the meals my grandmother prepared, but she gave that bowl a lot of attention. I often watched as she made gestures over it while whispering in her native Italian dialect. Only later did I learn that it was magic, not the sleight of hand seen on a stage, but the ability to affect change in real time. Armed with little more than water, a few drops of olive oil, and a secret incantation, my grandmother diagnosed and cured malocchio, the evil eye, on a daily basis, and that was no small feat. I was raised in a largely ethnic immigrant neighborhood where religion played a prominent role in everyday life. People went to church regularly, and statues of the Virgin Mary dotted front lawns like trees. They still do. Spiritual practice should have been a cut and dry matter, but it wasn't. Faith and superstition shared the same narrow lane, and when they collided, it required more than a visit to the parish priest to solve the problem. This was especially true with the ever-present evil eye. No one was immune to an envious glance or a disingenuous compliment. No area of life was beyond the eye's reach. A birth, a marriage, a graduation, a new home, and a promotion at work were all fodder for jealousy. And when the evil eye struck, people panicked. Women like my grandmother were called to address problems that needed fixing fast, problems that didn't fall under the jurisdiction of liturgy. Prayer is powerful, but it doesn't always yield immediate results. The effects of the evil eye, however, often come on swiftly and require equally fast action. Symptoms can be both physical and environmental. A minor symptom can be a headache or exhaustion, but a severe sign could include dizziness followed by a dangerous fall. People also called my grandmother after experiencing long spates of bad luck that had nothing to do with sickness. The car broke down twice, a pipe burst in the basement, and a wallet or purse got stolen. It was the proverbial sense of a series of unfortunate events. And it didn't seem logical to believe that so many bad things could happen in rapid succession to one person or to a single family. But the litany of signs and symptoms wasn't as important as taking immediate action. If my grandmother found that malocchio was infiltrating someone's life, she quickly went about removing it. And at the risk of sounding overly confident, it always worked. Interestingly enough, despite this background, I didn't understand the evil eye's universality until I was a teenager. After 9 years of solid Catholic education, I attended a public high school in Manhattan. It was culture shock. I suddenly had friends who were Muslim, Baptist, Jewish, Zoroastrian, Hindu, Buddhist, and atheist. In short, for the first time in my life, I had friends who weren't just like me. My world got infinitely more interesting with other religions and customs to explore. I didn't talk much about my Italian heritage, and I believed wholeheartedly that my new comrades knew nothing of the rituals I had been raised with, especially those surrounding the evil eye. Oh, I was wrong. Over the course of a week, usually while sitting in a noisy cafeteria at LaGuardia High School, I learned that malocchio had many other names. My friend Joshua was Jewish. Every time he talked about a good grade or something promising, he followed it with the Yiddish phrase kin hara, which means no evil eye. And then there was Rusa, a Zoroastrian, who told me that the gaze of a menstruating woman was particularly dangerous. Ali, whose parents had immigrated to the United States from Egypt, wore an ujat, an elaborate eye symbol the ancient Egyptians had painted on boats and coffins. You have all seen this symbol, I guarantee you of that. We each had a different name for the same thing. In very short order, I came to realize that so many cultures not only had a unique historical link to this ancient and feared curse, but also rituals to detect and cure it. That realization formed the foundation of my life as a magical practitioner. While my grandparents would never have considered themselves witches, they practiced folk magic, a very old and potent system of beliefs rooted in the mountains of their village in Campania, a region of southern Italy. It's a rich and varied tradition that offers magical solutions for every phase of life, from fertility spells to incantations that help carry a person's last breath into the next world. Folk magic traditions differ tremendously from culture to culture. Sometimes they even differ within the same culture. Factors like location and lineage contribute to the kind of magic that was and still is practiced. Some traditions are abundant with love spells, for example, and others focus primarily on protection. But in the expansive universe of folk magic, you'd be hard-pressed to find a tradition that doesn't have at least one remedy for the evil eye. Whether you refer to it as malocchio, mate, Greek, mal de ojo, Spanish, or ilaco in Somali, the evil eye stands at the crossroads where culture and magic meet. It is the common denominator of superstitions. Those who eschew it as irreverent or irrelevant often forget that the eye is mentioned in numerous sacred texts. In the Bible, it is referenced in the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Mark, in the book of Proverbs, and the book of Deuteronomy. In Bava Metzia, a tractate of the Talmud, the Jewish compendium of law and legend, it is stated that among those buried in a cemetery, quote, 99 of 100 die from an ayin hara, evil eye. In the Quran, verses 51 and 52 of the Al-Kalam are recited as protection against everything the evil eye represents: jealousy, malice, and misfortune. It is a widely held belief in the Hindu faith that a person's eyes emit the strongest energies of the body. Adherents of Zoroastrianism perform numerous cleansing rituals to ward away the eye. Interest in the evil eye has grown exponentially over the past few years and continues as it populates in mainstream culture. The evil eye jewelry people commonly wear is readily available in major retail outlets. The Nazar, comprised of a series of concentric circles in hues of blue and white, you've all seen that symbol, is by far the most popular amulet used to ward away the evil eye, and it has moved out of the shadows and into the spotlight. These days, you can glimpse the Nazar, as well as the Hamsa and a few other protective charms, on dresses, shirts, purses, and shoes, not to mention pillows, plates, and bed sheets. It isn't strange to see a Nazar hanging over a doorway in the foyer of someone's home, or painted onto the backsplash of a modern kitchen. Gotta get me one of those. Amulets to protect against the evil eye are also routinely spotted next to cribs and bassinets. And don't forget the workplace. I've seen the Nazar on more desks and in more offices than I can count. Prevalent in nearly every culture, transcending time, boundaries, and enduring for millennia, the eye is an abiding facet of the human condition. Even so, it is often a subject of confusion and misunderstanding. Can the evil eye strike anyone? How long does it last? Are there ways to remove it? This book answers those questions and many others, and also explores some of the evil eye's fascinating history. At the heart of this book, however, is magic. In these pages, you will find a guide that has been designed to empower you psychologically, spiritually, and emotionally. Learning how to detect if the evil eye is afflicting you or your loved ones will heighten your self-awareness, strengthen your self-confidence, and intensify, if not entirely redefine, your own self-reliance. Learning how to remove and banish the evil eye will deepen your relationship to the mystical, because you'll experience firsthand the awe and ecstasy of magic. You are using prayer, ritual, or focused energy to heal yourself or someone else, and doing so will propel you further along the path of self-realization. Learning how to use the evil eye to defend yourself, protect your home and family, and safeguard your livelihood will diminish fear-based patterns and awaken in you a new fortitude with which to face life and its inevitable challenges. Like magic itself, the evil eye does not belong to one culture or religion, and the spells and rituals in this book reflect its universal nature. You do not have to be a witch, shaman, or seasoned magical practitioner to use the methods contained within these pages. That said, I have included spells, rituals, and prayers from many faiths and from no particular faith to maximize your personal connection to the process and the material. For example, you might choose to focus on the Catholic spells and rituals for a long time before feeling ready to explore the sections on Judaism, Islam, or modern witchcraft. You might also decide to stay with one or two rituals that are purely botanically based, while gradually incorporating elements of the others into your practice. The choice is yours, and this book gives you many choices. By the time you reach the last page, you will be well educated about the eye. The ritual my grandmother performed was a closely guarded secret that had been passed on to her by her own mother, a link in an unbroken generational chain that continues even today. It was a privilege to grow up with the magic of tradition and the tradition of magic. Over the years, I have steadily added to To that well of knowledge as a practitioner, writer, and researcher, I've interviewed witches, healers, sages, and shamans from nearly every corner of the globe, and I still do. Now it's time to share that wisdom. This book is a complete course in evil eye magic, but it is also an amulet itself. Hold it, carry it, keep it on your desk or bedside table. Many of the prayers, spells, and incantations within these pages are very old, and the power extends beyond space, time, and the printed word. In embracing this knowledge, you will stop looking at the world through the lens of fear and start seeing it from a place of power. And that's really my main point. I want everyone who reads to really stop looking at the world through the lens of fear and see it through a place of power. That's a real big step for any magical practitioner. And I'm going to go ahead and go on to the epilogue here. Let's see. I'm going to read the epilogue. It's very quick, and then we'll open up to questions. So if ever there was a time to mine evil eye traditions and magic, it's now. Knowing how to detect and cure the quiet curse will undoubtedly improve your life and the lives of your loved ones. But being armed with this knowledge also grants you agency in uncertain times. Frightening global headlines only tell half of the story. When we observe our immediate environments, what we often see in others is a plethora of harsh emotions: anger, resentment, jealousy, avarice. Coveting has become a way of life for many. Your colleague's paycheck is bigger, your neighbor's house is newer, your best friend's private life is more fulfilling. Greed seems unending. In the midst of it all, we yearn for something that we can't quite name. Stability, serenity, security. Evil eye amulets are everywhere: television, magazines, Instagram feeds. And why? An-Azar is much more than a fashion statement. What's fueling the interest in new but very old ways to feel safe? At the heart of our longing is a desire to see the unseen, to be able to recognize a threat before it becomes a danger. Thankfully, magic grants us that variability. When you become aware of the evil eye, you open up your inner eye, the instinct to examine your surroundings and the people in it. As you acknowledge that instinct, you also sharpen it, and your inner eye begins to see in the metaphysical sense. This is not vision, but intuition. The inner eye sees in terms of gut feelings. When you recognize that bad luck isn't random, when you catch in the glance of another a dagger of envy, you are taking control of the very circumstances you have been taught to believe are uncontrollable. This is magic. More specifically, this is evil eye magic. The rituals, prayers, and practices that are now in your hands, after you've read the book here, complete in your hands, comprise traditions that are thousands of years old. They anchor us among our ancestors and strengthen us as part of a global community of practitioners. Is there anything more powerful in an age of social isolation and social fragmentation? Is there anything more reassuring than knowing you have the ability to change the course of your own life and the lives of those around you? Like the evil eye itself, the magic and methods in this book are timeless, and now the magic is yours. May you always possess the sacred vision to heal, protect, and transform. And when I wrote it, that's really at the heart of this. The whole journey of the book was the purpose, and the journey of the book is an interesting conversation. It's too long to get into the whole thing, but how it came to be, the whole point of it is to make people aware of what the evil eye is. And I have found throughout years and years of being a practitioner that many more people believe in the evil eye than are willing to admit. I think I've told this, I don't remember if it made it into the version of this book. I used to work for a nonprofit, and it was a lovely place. I worked there for years. And at the time, my office was what you would expect. It looked a lot like this. I had crystals, I had candles, I had everything, all of my magical army around me. But the people who I worked with, a couple of them really didn't believe in any of that. And they would, and this was over 10 years ago. So it was a different time. They were able to get away with saying certain things. Now it would have been a different, totally different thing if they'd have said the things to me now that they said back then, sort of poking fun of my beliefs and things. True story. Two of the people who specifically targeted me and would constantly, if there was, a knock on the wall or something dropped, oh, it's a ghost, go get Antonio. They'd laugh and they'd say these things, or, there was a bird flying over Central Park and it was too many crows and oh, go get Antonio, he must have called the crow, this kind of silliness. Whatever, didn't bother me. I take pride in the fact, though, that on two separate occasions, two of these people knocked on my office door, entered, closed the door, sat in the chairs right on the other side of my desk and said, is it true that you can remove the evil eye? Because I think I'm cursed. Now,
You always make fun of the witch in the woods and say you need a love potion.
until you need a potion. And it was a lesson for me in compassion, I guess, because my initial thought was to say, yeah, but get out, because you're annoying and you were mean, and I'm not doing anything nice for you. That's a human instinct. But back then, I didn't thankfully do that. I kind of sighed, let them know I wasn't too pleased with them doing that, but I said, yeah, what do you want? And it began sort of a conversation. They did, and it happened two separate people, two separate times, a couple months apart. I don't know if they each knew they did it, but their lives, I guess, must have changed a little bit. They stopped, one completely left me alone after that. Never made a single disparaging remark after that. The other one only started to make funny, they were funny, you know those jabs that are funny, but there's a little, like, oh, he looks smart, but he's smarter than, there was a little shade, but there was also a little, compliment in there. It changed because they both understood that they had some bad energy working in their lives, and it changed their life. I think it changed their perspectives, at least. I don't know if it changed their lives. I didn't keep in touch with them. I didn't like them enough to do that, but they, I did what I was, as practitioners, whatever magical system you train in, whether you train yourself, whether you're solitary, whether you learn from books, from someone else, you all know, you learn, and that's a question you're going to get when you do readings, however you do them. It isn't always easy to deal with people, especially those who are necessarily going to make fun of you one day and come to you the next day and want your help in private or whatever. It's a journey to learn, but that story always taught me that people really believe much more in the eye than they claim to, and they'll make fun of it. And that's, I'm jabbering too much. I want to open it up to questions. Don't forget I'm a Gemini, so I'll jabber if you don't, jibber jabber, as my nuns used to say, jibber jabber too many times.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you for your
Thank you. Thank you. I can't believe how many people are here.
I think there's still a few on the way, so.
Thank you so much for coming. No, you're not late.
Questions, I'll let you take questions as folks maybe raise a hand or indicate that they have a question.
Thank you. Hi, Mom. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Mike. Yeah. You know when it's happening when the mother and the aunt show up. Right? Right?
Everyone, I need chairs for you.
You want to help her get into it. She's not going to be able to. Oh, no, I'm talking to my hubs over there. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I was going anyway, so you heard me read an introduction. So from what you heard, maybe you've read it, maybe you've seen, you can feel free to ask any questions you'd like to ask. Anything on your mind, any questions, any thoughts. You're also going to speak to me privately if you would like to after, but if you have any questions, go ahead. Don't hold back. Don't hold back. Yes, yes.
So, hi, please again.
Thanks.
So one of the things I've been getting into discovering about the evil eye is that everybody has some aspect of it. But I find that culture that are also influenced by Christianity seem to demonize this symbol of protection. How do you feel about how Christianity has warped what the evil eye means, while also appropriating it for their own stuff?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Starting off, it's very true, and it's very true. You have this, exactly what you said. Christianity has taken it, demonized a lot of things. I think it all comes down to the fact, for me personally, when you are on a magical path and you discover that and you recognize it and you follow it, and you said very wisely before, Catholics, Christians, there's so much
Yeah, they're the witchiest ones.
witchiest bunch you can find. The sense of ritual is huge. We grew up with this ritual all around us. I think when you're on the path and you realize that if you've asked the question, you've recognized it and you understand what you're seeing, and you understand that so many of these amulets of power and protection have been demonized. And it's, no, the church, no, don't do that. You have to do it this way, or it's wrong, or it's sinful. I think once you've recognized it, you're already on the path of reclaiming the power of those amulets. When, the Christian, whether it's the church, the clerics, the priests, whoever it is, who are telling you that it's wrong, it's bad, there's, evil in it, there's, something demonic about it, it's a portal, it's evil, right? But, don't forget, I can tell you, over the years being raised Catholic, so many, whether they were priests, whether they were just, Catholic people who had an idea of certain things, have said, oh, that's evil, that's demonic, that's that. But the longer you stay on your own path, and especially if it's a magical path, you really start to understand that there is nothing evil about wanting to protect yourself. There is nothing bad about wanting to reach outside of it. There's nothing bad about looking at an amulet or a symbol and understanding the history of it. And that's one thing about the magical community. It draws from a lot of different places, and it gives voice to so many cultures that have never had a voice before, and that's what a lot of the magical community has been able to do. And I think we're still doing that work. I think we are still doing that work today, and there's always going to be much more work to do. But Christianity, I think, to go back to your question, once you've recognized that the symbols aren't evil and that you don't need to follow anyone else's directive about it, you've already gone beyond it. And I tell people already, you've transcended it. If you've recognized it and you understand that it's not true, you've transcended it, and that's your place of power right there. It's not evil, and you know it. And so you're able to claim it as those symbols as your own in any moment. And it's that's a powerful journey in and of itself to claim a symbol. Yeah.
One of the things I recommend to someone who left calls it so is that more often than not, the symbols that they're utilizing, they have reappropriated their own dogma so that they can give that to us in a sanitized and powerful way.
Mm-hmm.
When it really is Catholicism and by extension Christianity is just taking these symbols, they have more validity to
their own beliefs and their own agenda. Yes, there's an agenda there. It's very much true. Growing up Catholic, I've often said, and I get in trouble for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a difference between the Vatican in Rome, that's a corporation, and the Catholic Church. There are people, because I go to church, I was raised Catholic. I still consider myself Catholic. I go, but as a folk practitioner of folk magic, I take from a lot of different traditions. But I'm able to see through what Christianity has done in terms of taking those symbols and using them for their own agenda and sort of appropriating. You understand that once you're on that path and you see it and you study it and you take it, the magic becomes more and more, it becomes more open to you. Yes. And it embraces you much more, and you embrace it. So always keep that in mind when you're looking at symbols. Everything has its own specific origin and past, but do the research on, and I speak about this in the book with regard to the amulets. Do the research about amulets. And what amulet are you specifically drawn to? Why? That's a big question. Why? Some people are drawn to a Christian amulet and they have no idea why. I've had those questions a lot, but there's a reason for it. But you have to do the research for it and then follow that, and you will find out why. There are symbols I'm wearing underneath here more than I can tell you. It's amazing that I can hold my head up with all of these amulets that I have around my neck. But they're not, certainly by far not all Christian symbols. And just as they are symbols that represent the devotions I have. I think I again mentioned it in the book. I don't know why I haven't been able to real ago, but I do, and I wear a symbol of that. But I've done the research on it, and I mean, I guess I do. I mean, Marie was Catholic, and she practiced various forms of magic in her own way. But doing the research and reading about it and following it more, even though I was told it was wrong, that's where the magic happened. Well, I was told it was wrong, but I knew it wasn't, and that's when you know. That's when you know. Most certainly. You know. Yes, good. Questions? Anyone? Anyone?
I'm kind of curious
Yes.
about, I noticed a lot of the ways to diagnose and ways to remove the eagle eye. You asked for using oil, olive oil. And I know that it is used a lot in a lot of things,
Yes.
but I'm curious about what's that strong association with diagnosing and removing the evil eye with olive oil? Because it seems like olive oil is like, I would say the strongest method based on what I read.
It's the most common that I've come across, but there are many, many others. There's a lot of research that I, of course, wasn't able to include in this book, but yes, olive oil. So growing up in an Italian household where my grandmother, as I just read, did this, and then someone else in this room also does it. My aunt is here, and she knows exactly what my grandmother passed on to her as well. So olive oil and water, those are diagnostic tools, and they also will remove malocchio or the evil eye. From the Italian perspective, when you go back to look at folk magic, these were people who used what they had on hand to make the magic happen. There really wasn't a place as wonderful as this, as BronxWitch. There wasn't a store, there wasn't a botanica, there wasn't, in many, I mean, certainly when my grandparents grew up, there was in the mountain, there wasn't a store, you know, it was just the agriculture that they had. And so for them, they had water, they had oil. The origin of it, actually, I wish I knew where exactly it started, but it started because that's what they had. They knew somehow the prayer that was handed down, the incantation that was handed down, and those incantations differ tremendously from region to region, in Italy especially. They also, various South American countries, they differ tremendously from areas. Not everyone uses water and oil, but I think the water and oil is used very prominently with Italian cultures because that's what they had. And when you do look at something, just like when you do carom, when you do, you drop wax into water and you see shapes form, it's a form of divination in its own. But when you do a prayer, if you drop olive oil into water, you can see what happens. It, you know, they separate, that's science. But many times when you see it being done, you say a prayer or an incantation, and it is astonishing that you will see it disappear. So you will see that, you know, the phenomenon that's there shocks you. And that's where the magic is. So somehow it works, and they got it right because it's been passed on over and over again through the generations. But the main question, I think it's because, going back to the folk magic question, that's what they had. And in different parts of Italy, you know, where my grandmother came from, they used olive oil and water, and that's that. But in other parts, in areas right across, like not far away, towns not far away, they use scissors to cut the evil eye. Some people use matches, some people, so there are different things tacked onto it. There are also different prayers, but those practices, you can see them in a specific town. Scissors might have been just very common, you know, and they said, you know what, that's what we're going to use. So it goes back to what they had and what people in folk magic practitioners had. But I don't think they knew they didn't think they were practicing folk magic. Certainly my grandparents, who were devout Roman Catholics, did not think they were practicing any kind of magic, but magical they were, very much so. Yeah. Mom, you're actually going to ask me a question. This is Italian.
I also would say that the reason for the water and the oil is that you can actually see scientifically.
Right.
That's what happened.
Right.
Like to
Disappearing.
say the prayer and probably
The oil.
the water, if you have some, let's say, I think that's the oil.
Just disappears, which doesn't happen otherwise.
Right.
Doesn't happen. Forms two separate layers if you put oil and water. Mhm.
Or because it's crazy when you see that drop of water disappear in the water, you're like, oh.
What happens? That's
That's
the magic of the oil and water.
And so that
Right.
is also a help for the visual.
Right.
When
When you see it,
you're like.
there's a big
"Oh my
difference.
God, I really, I was walking on, whatever. And so
Doing something.
there's this thing that it's visually very potent, very.
And when you see things, it makes an impression on you. But there are other methods too that have to do just herbal methods too that I've read that have nothing to do with prayers necessarily. There are ways to diagnose it. Just there's a form of divination with that I've included with tarot cards. So there are different ways to do it. The oil and water, from my tradition, from growing up in an Italian household, is certainly the most prevalent one. But you will read about others in the book that do not use oil and water. And again, it goes to what you're comfortable with and to what resonates with you. Yes.
And you can feel it when it does.
When it does.
You feel it.
You can feel the energy when it's taken
You
off.
can feel it go away.
Mhm. You can feel it
Like
rise out.
lifting, yeah, it's like
Lifting. Lifting. Growing up, I remember if my grandmother didn't do it for me, my aunt would do it. And even as a young, I remember calling, and I could be somewhere, and you kind of just all of a sudden the headache is gone, or just the heaviness is gone, or the feeling, and energy is gone. And I've had this happen several times, and I wish back then I would have written them down. But I'd have been like on the corner of 70th and Columbus or something, and she'll call my cell phone and say, "Oh, it's done. I just took it off. You had it. It was there. It's gone." And I'll say, 5 minutes ago, I just told someone, "Oh, I feel better. I don't know what just happened," or something happened. Something lifted, as he said. You can feel it. You can feel it. And many people have, spoken to me and told me the same thing, that they've had a ritual done, and they're very simple, rituals most of the time. And they've also experienced that spate of bad luck leaving. They'll say, "You know what? I did wake up the next morning and I went to work and got really good news that I didn't expect." Or the problem that I thought was really going to manifest into this huge bomb totally vanished, took a turn that I didn't expect, and now it's gone. And the weight is off my shoulders. Or, so different things happen when you understand it and when you practice it.
The release
Yeah.
can be heavy too.
The release is very
Because like there's been moments where I had to get rid of things, even with myself, and I'll find myself randomly sick, but I think I'm gonna die, and then 10 minutes later I'm just like, okay, that's done. And I was just like, oh, is that what we're doing? We're just ripping leeches off now? Like, what the hell was that? And it's kind of this feeling of like, because I was gonna lead it to my question actually too, of not difficulty per se, because if you give it time, eventually you'll know. But as far as the development of Malokia, right, and as you see it, is there a specific thing that you're looking for to discern what is just the commonplace evil eye versus a full-on curse? And I'm not talking about, oh, I pissed somebody off and they're a witch, they lit up my candle, my life is over. No, but I mean versus something that has genuinely implanted itself in your life and is creating some damage that does not just come from I pissed somebody off in traffic, my dog cracked on the neighbor's lawn, whatever this is. How would I, until I wait to the point where it festers and you can't really confuse the two, is there a moment of discernment outside of divination that you can just kind of tell this is the nature of evil eye versus this is something else?
This is sort of a curse in the way that, because, by the way, when I talk about the subtitle, The Quiet Curse here,
Yes.
I mentioned in the book why it's called The Quiet Curse. And that's because many people will think about witches and cursing or magical practitioners, and they get this idea, the Hollywood image. There's an altar, there's hair, there's blood, there's bones, there's, all this dark stuff that's going on to cast a curse. And while much of that is true, that does happen, it's also very, I'm not going to say necessarily difficult for magical practitioners, seasoned magical practitioners, to cast curses. They know what they're doing, but it takes a great deal of energy, it takes a great deal of timing, it takes a great deal sometimes of ingredients. And as I write in the book, if you got that mean boss and you need fingernail clippings or hair, you're going to have to wait for the right time to get that. So that doesn't always happen right away. the quiet curse, the evil eye is the quiet curse because a single glance really is all it takes. It comes from the human emotion, the envy, the jealousy, the greed, the resentment. That's why it's quiet, because you don't know what's happening. Anyone can go ahead and cast that on you. And I get into that in the end of the book, sort of a whole chapter, which has taken on a life of its own in the last chapter. But how do you see the difference between an evil eye sort of quiet curse versus a more intense curse? For when I have experienced this, it's literally when you're doing the diagnostic, when you diagnose do a diagnostic ritual for the evil eye, someone has it, you've done something to remove it, whether you're doing it with scissors, matches, you're doing one of the spells that's included. Maybe you do want to do a spell to Saint Teresa of Lisieux, maybe you want to do a psalm spell, or the bath, whatever it is that you want to do. Once it's gone, if you know, I've done this and I feel better and it's gone, my luck has improved or the bad luck has dissipated, the problem that's been plaguing me or my household for quite a while now feels like it's done. I can notice it. You could see signs. Problem in my body has left. The constant headaches, the nightmares, the anxiety. Yeah, the turnaround is pretty quick once you've done the ritual to remove. So that's how you know that you're dealing with some sort of evil eye energy. When you have people who will come back to you, when you're a practitioner or a reader, and who will say, I felt it was really good. I felt okay for the first 3 days, but it seems like everything's repeating itself now, and I don't know. That's when you're getting into a sign. But I always tell people and practitioners to try it twice more and to do it. And sometimes I know in the town where my grandmother is from, the women especially who used to know how to, who did the diagnosing and the removal of Malokia, would often band together. They would call each other, or they knew to tell each other that they would do it at a specific time to remove something that was really negative energy. They would, 5, 6, 7 of them would know to do it at the same time, and they would do that. And if you are working with someone who's, whether you're doing it in a group, if you're in a household and you're all learning how to do it, if you're a member of a coven, just if you're learning together, if you do something in numbers and you're going to do that ritual together, that's a very powerful thing to do something at a specific time. But I always say if the result is fast and the result comes rather quickly and it remains, and someone speaks to you a month later and says, stuff is headed in the right direction, it changed, and I can feel it and see it, you're dealing with an evil eye magic. Yeah, versus sort of the long curse or the generation. We're thinking of also like a generational curse or things like this. Yeah.
So not necessarily learning how to distinguish them, because again, that speaks to my point where eventually it will fester to the point where that it's not just evil eye.
Just evil eye.
I just mean in the nature of evil eye. Like, for example, in my culture, you have headaches that don't go away. You feel like somebody's with you in the room, but you're by yourself. Certain specific things, we will say you need to leave before them, and they will specifically. Whereas I know that for very specific curses, it'll be things like your plants start dying, your pet suddenly dies, and certain things start to go astray, which aren't like severe, but they're a little darker and heavier. So it's just like, would you say that if you see something that reaches into this, forget about Malokio and go straight into the curse, or would you say you still have to kind of diagnose and wait?
Yes, I do know what you mean. I would always start, even though if I say, listen, if you have plants, for example, and I don't know if magical practitioners often hear about the thing that if, your plants have died, or a specific plant that was healthy has died, a plant can act like an amulet. It absorbs a curse, it absorbs negative energy, and the plant will die. Just like if you're wearing an amulet, and people will say, oh, my amulet broke. So they get worried, and I'm like, no, that's good. The amulet broke, it absorbs what was coming to you. So it broke and it took the hit. That's good. In the same way, if there's a pattern that I would see, if someone tells me, I had all these plants and 5 out of 6 of them have now gone south, I would look at that as being more of a specific type of curse. I would look at if somebody in your household, or if your husband, your wife, your partner, the kids, your sibling, you're all getting sick with different things over this 4-week span, or it's something that you just can't, you hear people saying all winter long, we can't get rid of these colds, we can't get rid of I don't know why we're sleeping so much, I don't know why we're doing this so much, and you see this pattern that's there. I always start with saying the evil eye method first and see what happens, but if you see a pattern there that you're mentioning, I do think you're dealing with a more specific curse, a more specific energy. Yes, which are also extremely prevalent. And we know as magical practitioners that those are also extremely prevalent. And some can be extremely focused. That's why I say in the book, you could never be too safe as far as I'm concerned. That's why I jingle when I walk, because I have all my amulets on here and here. But yeah, a very, very important question for people who are wondering. That's true, Sue. And you also, it's not always the, sometimes like the specific things that happen. I keep breaking dishes or someone keeps getting sick. Sometimes it's a condition that, I haven't been able to get a job or change my job for 9 months. And everyone else I'm doing all the right things. My friend has the same credentials I do. I have more. They're doing this the right way. I'm doing the same exact things. I can't get past that first interview. What's going on? That's targeted toward your financial life. That's targeted toward your, yeah. That's where you start doing different and more specific things. But it will start here with the methods that you find. But yes, you will see things. People can't get that job. You can't get a certain, your marriage. You think, the marriage is going okay. And then all of a sudden you hit this roadblock or this patchy thing, where we're fighting all the time. I don't know what's going on. This one annoyed me. This one annoyed. This annoyed me. That annoyed me. This happened. That's a prolonged condition. That's prolonged energy, and it's specific energy. So there are different methods for taking that off. And you'll probably get that in a future book. But yes, a very important question to recognize the difference. Also to remember the methods that I've included here are specifically for the evil eye and for that. So you will find the evil eye in general, with whatever you're going to call the evil eye. So someone, because I've been asked that a lot, like, oh, if you're going to diagnose it, how do you know you're diagnosing the evil eye and you're not diagnosing a bigger current? Because they're specifically tailored. This is a specific ritual and diagnostic tool to tell that you're dealing with evil eye energy.
But in my opinion, that book on evil eye is really more general in the sense that, because for someone to take energy, you must really be hated.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
exactly.
like you have to be in some sort like drug dealing or something. I don't know, like something.
No, there needs to be a
dark.
dedication to hurting somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not so specific that
A heavier
it's not
curse.
as prevalent as, let's say, the evil eye was declared.
Right,
Some
because it
people
takes
will
more.
Not live their whole life and never be cursed. Like I get that, but it's just that and not a personal experience, thank God, but I have been in situations where family and friends are around people who all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, it's like a dark, quick spiral, and it's just like, how did they suddenly start dive bombing when, like you said, they were just, chilling and then all of a sudden, boom,
Yeah.
And so that makes me think, up until the moment where they started dive bombing, could there have been some type of signal? Because I also refuse to believe that the spell is just going to magically fester in the closet and then they just come out and get you. There has to be something. So that's where I'm speaking to, those kinds of specifics. Just because, I the little bit that I do take personally is like, damn, I wish I could have caught something earlier.
But I think but the longer you do the work, as they say, the longer you do the practice, you do start to catch things. Because I'm, 10 years ago when I was in my 30s, I was different in terms of the way I practice, because now I can catch things in a different way that I wasn't able to catch things 10 years ago. So the longer you practice, the longer you do know things. Also, the longer you practice, I found things I remember being in my 20s and things would scare me. I was a magical practitioner, but things would scare me, going to mom, cover your ears. Yeah, mom, cover your ears, graveyard dirt. Right? Oh my God, we're going to graveyard dirt. What for? Now, sure, let's go get it together. I'm fine. I'll bring the jar, let's go. But you find things that you grow in different ways. Even the idea of a curse. There was this whole idea, and I write about that in the book. Different systems of magic. There are different ethical lines and different beliefs about cursing. I think personally, and I do tell people all the time, I have no shame in saying that, I don't think it's wise or healthy to turn the other cheek if you've been made a victim of if someone has targeted you directly. I don't think it's smart to turn the other cheek. That's where defensive magic comes in. And if you want to call it that oh, well, this person did this to me and you're cursing. And I'm not talking about, like you said before, the simple things. Oh, the neighbor snapped at me. This one keeps cutting me off. This one gives me dirty looks at work. Well, you want to waste your energy doing a curse or something on that person? No. But there are people who are really vicious and really mean and will make you the target of a campaign sometimes. And that's when you have to look up and say, I'm not going to turn my other cheek and ignore it. No, you do fight back. And if it means you're going to cast a curse on someone for your own protection, that, in my opinion, is creating balance in your life. Because if you're under the threat of a curse or a curse is circulating in your life and working, your life is out of balance. Something in your life is out of balance. And when you go ahead and return that energy, your life tends to go back into balance. So that's why a lot of people who have come to me over the years or have written to me even since the book came out and said, I'm under a curse or whatever, I know I am or this, but I'm turning the other cheek or I'm trying to ignore them. And my response is the opposite of that. Yes, Alan.
We have a question actually from our live stream members that are tuning in. And this question comes from Cynthia. And Cynthia wants to know, is it possible to look at someone and diagnose the evil eye? Perhaps in all of your years of experience, you developed the skill, or maybe auntie or someone had gotten to that level. But is it possible to get to that level where either you're so sensitive to it that you can just look at someone and see that it's happened, or are there instances where the symptoms of it are visible symptoms?
So yes. So starting with the first part last night. The first part, the symptoms that are visible. I was at my aunt's house in the Bronx and she made us dinner and she kept repeatedly dropping things. She dropped the dinner she was making, then she dropped the plate, then she knocked over a glass. And I looked up at the same time that she did and I said, "Oh, you got the eye on you, this is too much." It was just uncommon. She's not a klutzy person. Yeah.
You don't have to have a headache, because you could tell right away. It's like, why?
That's how that energy manifested. She's dropping things.
So
you know in those sense, whether you can, so looking at someone, it's an interesting question. I think that it is in fact possible to look at someone if you can there are many readers who can look at people. We know as practitioners, there are readers who can look and see the aura field and can see things that are specific to it. So yes, certain people can see that and say, you know what, I can tell. I can read something. Personally, over the years, I always say my own, I think being a magical practitioner and working with it, I think over the years, my intuition has gotten much better and stronger. I can sense when something is wrong with someone in a way, not like in this way that I can look at someone who just walked in the room and I don't know them and say, "Oh, this is terrible, you're under a curse." No, I've never been able to do that. But speaking with someone, I can often get a sense if there's an energy that between us or there that's coming out or that's emanating that feels heavy. It's not necessarily this bad, dark energy, but there's a heaviness to it that you really get to understand when you're doing evil eye magic and working. So there are people who can absolutely look at you and say, "Oh, the aura is a little bit here in this area or that area, the field, as some might refer to it." So they can. Me personally, if I was sitting with you and you started dropping 12 different things, I would tell you right then and there something's wrong. That's one of the things. If you said something else happened, interestingly enough, I was with a friend who I hadn't seen in a while, and she sat down, and out of nowhere, she kind of she was disoriented. I don't know why. And I, asked her the requisite medical questions. Did you eat? Is your blood sugar down? Like, what's going on? And she even said, she was like, she was like, I started stuttering on certain things yesterday. And I'm like stammering even, like I'm stopping. And that's a weird thing. And when you've ruled out a lot of the medical sort of things, and you always have to be, cautious about that. I've written about that as well. But those are signs that you can tell, yes. So you don't necessarily, not everyone needs a diagnostic method like the water and the oil or the tarot cards to read energy or people. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yes.
I'm hoping is the remedies that you have in the book to remove the evil eye. Are these children and pet safe as well?
There are sections, yes, there are sections that in the book that I will tell you warding for children. Actually, there's a whole section just for that. There's a warding for the home. And the sections that, and when you read a spell or you read any of the magic that's there, I always tell people, yes, they're pet friendly, they're safe. But if there's anything that you feel instinctively and intuitively that you don't want to do, even if it's just involving a candle or if it's involving a particular herb, if it's involving, some people just don't like the scent of rosemary. I can't imagine. I love rosemary, but people don't, if there is something, also there are herbs that are in the book, by the way, that you have to be careful about, because for instance, as a cat parent, I have to be extremely careful about what herbs I have, because God forbid I drop the wrong leaf or something and my cat gets to it. You got to be careful. Same thing with the dog. There are many, cats are there's so many. Cats are sensitive. Yeah, cats, there are a lot of different things. Yeah, poinsettias, bad. So you got to be careful with those things. So if you do have pets and you know specifically that there's an herb, or even if it's some of the wood or the bark that I talk about here, the incense burning, if you know that might be dangerous to your pet, do not do that one. There are others you can find that are more general. But in general, yes, I did write them and design them so that they are friendly for your pets, for your children. But there are specific things for children to ward against the evil eye. That's a big, important thing to do. Yeah, for children.
But what you said before is good. Like it's a sense.
Yes.
You feel uncomfortable doing anything, you don't push yourself to do it.
Never. Always. Intuition is always, I write a lot about intuition, not only here, but in other, articles I've written and stuff like that. Intuition is extremely, extremely important. People ignore it because they think we're crazy. You've been taught, what are you talking about? What do you mean? I get a feeling and I don't want to go in there. And people are like, you're out of your mind. What's wrong with you? What are you hearing voices like Joan of Arc? What's wrong with you? Like what? Forget Joan, read Joan's story. It's a powerful story. So that's that voice, that inner ding, that voice that you're hearing, your intuition is always working. Learning how to listen to it is really an important thing, and it's working all the time. It could be as simple as, that's a really cool, piece of jewelry that I see there. It's on sale. I like it, but I don't know why. It's giving me a weird feeling. As someone who likes bling, I've had that experience many times, because I always look at it, I'm like, oh, I want that. And then I'll sort of be like, I don't know. I feel weird, like something just is off. And I'll listen to myself. And no matter how beautiful it is, no matter how good the price is, I'll put it back if I have that feeling. And it's the same thing with looking at, because people have sent me, spells. And I've written in the book when someone has given me a spell that I've included in the book. I write about that. I even look at things and read them, and if I get a sense myself about it, I'm always listening to that. Always listening to that. Huge, huge thing. So listen to it. Yes.
A little question just in regards to the specifics. I remember talking about evil eye as far as like people, situations. Would that be something that would also apply to like objects? So like for example, I have neighbors that I can't stand that are constantly making noise outside, and I just find this to be a funny coincidence that 2 or 3 days after I'm talking to my friend by the way, but I'm like blowing up. I'm just angry about it. 2 or 3 days later, I noticed that the speaker they've been tormenting me with all summer is suddenly broken in the back of the car. And so I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that's lovely, but I don't want to feel like when I go off temper, I'm breaking things. You know what I mean? And so with that perspective, would there be like, is there a concept around protecting things from the evil eye? Like,
Yes,
for example,
first
like, I'm really big on
off,
always telling my friends, I don't know if this is a real thing or not, but I'm always just like, have protection on your car. I don't know why, but I feel like when anybody's always out there and then they're just like, oh, I'm so big into this, I'm so big into that. I'm like, where's the rosary? Where's the this? Where's the that? Because I know you're
Where's
not
your
praying to the
protection?
star every day. I know you're
Yeah.
not maintaining something physical here. So what are you doing? I don't know why. But those same people are the ones that were just like, you know, it's crazy people behind you, whatever. Had this crazy accident. You know why I didn't make it? Because I stopped by the botanica to buy the thing that was
stuff.
the thing.
Yeah.
The same day they would have
Mhm.
So how can I
Objects, yes,
Yeah.
I think it's in chapter 1 when I write about the evil eye, when I go in from what it is to say about people, your pets, and then I say, by the way, objects are not immune to the evil eye either. And some people call them cursed objects, or, you know, someone will say a haunted object or something like that. Very much so. You can, if someone, and you can just think about it, when you think about it in terms of energy, if someone is wearing a piece of jewelry, let's say, it could be a rosary, someone has a rosary, it's their rosary, but they've been the victim of a lot of evil eye negativity. That rosary can absorb it. Now, just because it's a rosary doesn't mean the rosary expelled it. You know, so that object can hold energy, and we know that things hold energy. We hold energy. You cleanse, the cleansing of objects, a very important thing. You can buy. I don't know. Has anyone ever? So we collect antiques, and you know, we like antiques, my husband and I. So if you've ever purchased an item, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but maybe you purchased it and something weird happens afterwards. Yeah, it goes. Now you can immediately put it in the trash, or if you want to start cleansing it, you want to start doing different, you know, you want, whether it's incense, whether it's Palo Santo, whatever you're using it for. The Palo Santo I find is for denser energy, just for me personally. The sage is for a little bit lighter energy, but yes, your answer is yes. I have had many people ask me about cursed objects, especially things that tend to be inherited. They tend to hold energy, but I do believe that objects can hold the negative energy like that. And it's important to cleanse things. Just because you're being given something, you know, by your favorite uncle, your favorite, you know, coworker, whoever it is, the ancestor who's, you know, great great grandpa, great great uncle, great great, they might be wonderful people. They're sweet, they're spiritual, and loving. Doesn't mean that, you know, that the glass and plate that they gave you are holding their sweet, lovely, kind energy. So yes, I think it's always important when you bring something into the house, into your car, huge into the car. I mean, in Italian culture, you get that new car. Just when we got a new car fairly recently, I mean, it was like I told her, I said, as soon as we turn onto the street and go to my aunt's house, we're going to be flooded with change, because in Italian culture, they throw change in your car, and you open the window and you're throwing quarters in your car and things like that. And you're like, car is new. I just, like, you know, they're throwing change in there. They're throwing change in there. You should have the, you know, what are the, you know, the cornicello in Italian. The cornicello is often on the rear view mirror. The rosary is also very common in there. So yeah, I always tell people, if you want to bless your car, St. Christopher is also the most common metal, but if you want to bless your car, it's as simple as taking, and this goes back to folk magic. It's simple magic. You can take, if you don't have, you know, the specific leaves or herbs, you want to take something as simple as, you know, water that you have blessed or prayed, and you can take a cotton ball, you take a piece of paper towel and drench it and run it across your car. You can do it on the window. If a cross is a sacred symbol to you, you can cross it over the windows. You can cross it over your windshield. You can cross it over your steering wheel. I've seen people do it over the brakes, over the engine. Very, very wise to do that. Don't forget, we are energy, and everything really is energy. What do we know about energy? It changes form, but it cannot be destroyed. It's not going to go anywhere. So when you work with that energy, you're going to have better results about things. So the objects are a big thing. Yes, Alan. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Is there something that you would recommend for a person to have on their person to ward?
Yes, I always recommend the simplest thing, and this is something I grew up with, and I just recently told someone the funny story. I think I did a podcast recently, and I said, salt. Okay, growing up, my mother would put salt in pockets, okay? And I do that, and my husband on several occasions has put on a blazer of mine. Sometimes it's been his. Not too long ago, it was 2 months ago, we were walking, we went to an event and we were walking and he went in the pocket and he was like, oh, when did we wear this last? And I was like, I don't know. He pulled out salt and it was like, just a handful of salt. Sometimes I've gotten a little neater about it as I've gotten older. Sometimes I'll put it in, bag it in like a little, pouch and then tie it. But salt, yes. Salt is a very, very strong agent and a cleansing. And I think if you can do one thing, it would be salt. And you can really, and a lot of people will say, oh, don't get table salt. You don't want to get table salt. I've used table salt personally. I have found that it works. However, if you feel more comfortable using the sea salt, the kosher salt, the Himalayan salt, that's fine too. But I think salt in general is such a cleansing agent. It's so powerful. Salt has always been, it goes so far back. We know that in so many.
Solomon in the Bible explains that the oceans are salted so that we can pour our sins.
Isn't that fascinating?
That is why
To be cleansed.
the ocean salt deepens. The salt absorbs
Mhm.
and neutralizes,
Yeah.
and so we're surrounded by it to our sins.
Mhm.
That's something I learned.
It's a wonderful, and to carry it upon your person or in your new home, or even if your home isn't new, you can be there 25 years. You just want to cleanse it. You can throw some salt in the corners or the sweep. Yes, throw the sweep, sweep it out, and you'd be surprised. Yes, yes.
Cynthia kind of on this, but it's a little bit of a fun one.
Mm.
She wants to know, have you ever stopped someone to tell them that they have the evil eye on them? Or maybe you've seen someone where it's so obvious that even though they're not asking for the help or looking for it, that you've just been like, I have to let you know that this is something spiritual and there's something you can do about it. Has that ever happened?
It has happened, and it wasn't too long ago. We were at an event, and someone who I had never met, we were just introduced to each other, and she said, how are you doing? And she started to explain, people start talking sometimes, and she started to explain certain things, and she was talking about, oh, thank God I made it here tonight, because on the way here, the car started, so I don't know what happened, the engine light went on, and then she started to go back and talk about what happened the week before. She described a series of unfortunate events in 2 weeks, and I just looked at her and I said, I don't know if you've ever heard of the evil eye, but it sounds like you could use some help with stuff. I said, it's not really normal. Do you think it's normal to have this many mishaps in even 14-day span if you're having 9 mishaps that have affected your life? Oh, and I remember her saying that, we got to it and she said, oh, well, the other morning, and it's terrible, and I don't mean to laugh about it. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of the way she said it. She had gone up the stairs to her apartment, and she said, I've never tripped going up the stairs. And she said, I tripped on going up the stairs, and she showed me sort of the black and blues that she had on there, and I was like, oh, that was number 9 that you've told me about so far, like of something that happened. So yes, when people have come up to me, or if I've met someone new and I don't know them, and they just start saying things, if I sense or hear a pattern of stuff, yes, I will tell you, I think you might have the evil eye on you. And going back to before, if someone is sitting at a table with me, if you're dropping a lot of things, or you ever been somewhere at a table where people have knocked over a glass like 3 times in the course of an hour and they just can't get it, or having the first drink, the glass goes and then the fork goes, and they're, oh, what happened here? Something's wrong, but it's not wrong with anybody else at the table. There are 10 people sitting at the table. You're the only one who's doing this. Look at it. Look at that. That's something to look at. So I have done that. Yeah, and it's always been okay. No one's ever sort of looked at me and said, what are you talking about? They've appreciated it. But it's just been a few times, and I have done that, yes. And if it can help someone, I think I'm going to try to do it. Very much so. Anybody? Questions? Yes.
Could somebody ever self-inflict the evil eye to themselves?
Yes. So I talk about, there are ways, how does the evil eye manifest and what it is, and I talk about one way is that it is intentional. Someone is resentful and angry or jealous of you, and they are flat out, they'll let you know it. They'll look at you, they'll throw you shade, they'll make a comment, they'll stare at you, they'll give you a nasty look. You can feel it, you can see it, you know they don't like you. That's number one. Number two is an unintentional way that people give you the evil eye. They'll say something and they mean, the compliment, but they're not necessarily aware that they are harboring some resentment about it or some jealousy about it or some envy about it. That's where you see people, you have people who knock on wood, or the little rituals, the spitting afterwards, two, or the God bless you. There are people who, parts of, in Sicily, in parts of southern Italy, it's very common to, people will spit if you get a compliment. They'll also, growing up, we basically walked around doing this, because you get a compliment and you sort of did this under the tables that they didn't see, or you put them in your pocket and you did this all the time. That was to ward off an unintentional casting of the evil eye, because someone who gave you the compliment might not necessarily know they're still harboring a little envy. The third way, which is the way you're referring to, how do you bring the evil eye upon yourself? When you boast. If you're boasting too much about something, and this is why I've mentioned to people a lot, you've posted already about how beautiful your house is on Instagram. You've posted already about the new doorway and the new car. Do you need to post about the new refrigerator? Do you need to post about what I've told people a lot, the new doormat? How much do you need to let people know? And I say, you have to live. Everyone has to live. You got to celebrate your successes. You have to celebrate the positive things that are happening in your life. You want to celebrate the joy, celebrate the birth, celebrate the good job, celebrate all those things. But there's a line that you reach. You don't want to go over it. You don't want to go too far with it. I always say you got to be mindful. Live, but be mindful of how you're speaking about your successes or about your dreams, about your hopes. That vacation you're planning, and maybe you've gotten a really good deal. The tickets were great. The hotel room was great. I had one day left. I didn't know it, and I got the deal. I got this. We're going on this vacation. Don't be careful about how much you talk about it, kind of thing. Yes. Well, you tempt. Well, to some people, they'll think about people who are magical practitioners in any way will think about, oh my God, I'm inviting the evil eye here. I better shut up. Or you're sitting somewhere and someone's talking and you think to yourself, boy, they don't know anything about this stuff, because they keep going on about how cool their lives are, or the happiness and all that. And again, that's great and wonderful. But to some people, they don't know that they're inviting it in. They don't know that boasting is in fact tempting. You can tempt fate. You can tempt the evil eye when you're doing that. That's where we talk about the third way of doing it. So you can bring it upon yourself. And again, I always tell people that doesn't mean, listen, you got the promotion, you worked hard, you got whatever it is, the kid got into college, whatever it is, you want to celebrate that. Yes, that's normal. Just do it, celebrate it, but you don't have to post it 50 times. You don't have to tell every stranger about it. So that's where you get into it. So you can bring it upon yourself by boasting a lot. Yes. Absolutely.
I was just going to piggyback
Yes.
what you were saying from the practical perspective is that even when it comes to projects or certain spell works or rituals that you're doing, talk about them after they're done.
Mhm.
Talk about them after they're accomplished. Not even after they're the candle's done and you cleaned up shop.
Right.
I learned the hard way where in the beginning things were a little more successful for me, for lack of a better words, and I was gaining traction on what I was capable of doing. I was so big on documenting and taking pictures and sharing and this and that. And I started to notice that traction that I built up, it almost correlated. The more I tried to be open and share, and I have the positive intention in the world, right? What I'm doing and helping, whatever. And it's just now it's almost just you're talking too damn much. So now we're not doing much anymore. And it was that thing where now I come out of the iron, with my siblings and family members, I could be doing God knows what. And 3 months later, I'm like, oh yeah, that reminds me of that one time where I did that candle for 10 days and I had to go to it. You had a 10-day work.
I didn't know.
That's something that I'll definitely take it back and say, don't tell everybody what you're doing.
No, I mentioned in the book, you're buying that new house. Don't start talking about it until after you got those keys in your hand. That's one of my examples. Don't talk about the new car until after you have the keys in your hand. I know to a lot of people, it sounds like you're going too far about things. But again, you could never be too safe in this world. We're talking about very real human emotions. I always say the book is a friendly reminder about a very unfriendly topic. Nobody wants to talk about jealousy. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that we've all experienced feelings of jealousy and envy, and we've all been on the receiving end of those feelings, okay? It's important for you to understand So live your life with that kind of a sense of just caution about that. And that's where being aware of the evil eye comes in. Because you understand that, yes, look, it's a sad truth, it's a scary truth, but not everybody wants the best for you. Not everybody wants you to live your best life. And that's a hard realization for a lot of people. And it's not only your enemies, it's not only the people in your past who you had to fight with. There are people in your life right now who do not, want you necessarily to live your best life. You have to be aware of that. And it's important to know. And once you're aware of it, your life changes. Yes, of course.
I'm a Gemini too, so I don't think
Well, we'll be here. Yeah.
in my culture, we have certain ways of if we feel off and feel like we're getting the evil eye, we do certain hand movements or certain things to
Mhm.
kind of return to sender.
Yeah.
Is there something that you would recommend that is kind of foolproof, that anyone can do, that is not doing the type of spiritual work that you and I do?
Yeah, so I mentioned before, and I do write about briefly the hand signals. My grandfather was very much into hand magic, as I would, doing the hand signals. But the one thing that I was raised with, which is sort of an Italian thing, so to speak, whenever if someone says something to you that you don't like, then you don't want to hear it, like, oh, why'd you say something like that? It was a mean comment, a cruel comment, or a jealous comment. Again, the horns always come into play here. And what are the horns? Horns are protection and wild, and the animals have horns, they protect them. So when we do this, and usually the Neapolitan way of doing it is you say, "Tia," say "Tia," and you sort of ward it away. And you're essentially killing that negative energy. So I often tell people to do that. And I've been at, an event or a table or something, and someone has said something, not even necessarily to me, but they've said something that I think is just cruel or inappropriate or just weird. You don't say that, or they'll say like, oh, the nice car, don't drive it off a cliff. It's something like that. And you're just like, oh, don't. So I've done that. So the horns for me are a very, very powerful symbol. Words are energy. Words are extremely powerful. Words are intentional. So words are spells. Saying no, as I always say, is a spell. That alone is a spell. But so the hand signals, and sometimes they're called mudras in different cultures and different religions. So yes, for an Italian, someone who was raised in an Italian household and who practices Italian folk magic, the horns are very much the way of warding something off right on the spot. You don't have to do it right out to someone so they can say, what are you doing? I've walked down, how many streets have I walked down just holding them in my pockets, like concealed in my jacket. My hands are in there, but they're like this. That's the strongest one for me, always. And I do a few, I think there are a few hand gestures in here that I've talked about in terms of the amulets that they are, because this is an amulet that often is worn in Italian folk magic by practitioners. So yeah, it works.
Let's get into position. Are there any more questions real quick before we wrap up this portion of the day? So I want to thank everyone and ask for a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you so much. Please.
Questions. We're going to move into the book signing portion of our event today. So certainly if there's still more questions, you'll have a moment, Antonio, when you come up to get your book signed, to ask more questions in chat. And Antonio has so kindly offered some evil eye readings to you guys, just exclusively for those of you who are private chat ticket holders. So what we're going to ask everyone to do is to hang out and mingle. We're going to make some changes in the room here and start getting everyone's book signed. And folks who would like reading, if you don't mind hanging out for a little bit when the books are all signed, they'll all get a moment with Antonio to get a reading, okay? So feel free to check out the shop. If you want
Beautiful
to
shop.
Now, we'll be out in a minute, Mom. Help yourself to some food. I got you. Yeah. Pastries are amazing. There is tea.
Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you. I can't believe how many people are playing. What are we looking here? That was incredible. No, I just have this here. So, and we're going to go out to do the signing now. Okay. Right.
On in. So I think, why don't we do these last three, what we have, those three lined up by the wall, open, with the chairs. And we'll have. Yeah. And we'll-
Oh, dear, I didn't know.
Have everyone walk this way.
I have two surprises here.
Right here's where we're gonna do those things.
Oh, perfect. It's a surprise.
Take this chair.
Excuse me, Jerry. I'm just gonna walk over here. She's telling me I have a surprise here. I don't know who's here. Oh my God, what a surprise. Oh my God, thank you so much. Ellie. Thank you so much for coming. I can't believe it.
You did good.
Thank you so much. You should have seen her. I was so stunned by how many people were online. Yeah, you get shocked. By things. Yeah. Yeah, you get some. I can't believe you guys came here. Thank you so much. Hi. But it's a ways from where you are. Thank you.
I'm gonna take your microphone.
Oh, I know, I'm broadcasting.
You know, we gave their special secrets away because everybody on the live stream is listening to us.
Everyone's hearing you. Thank you for coming.
Yes, I have. Yes, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming. It's water and all that. Pardon me. Hey, Jeanette, how are you, honey? All right, live streamers. Thank you guys so much for being here. This has been amazing. It has been so special having you guys to tune in. We're really excited that we have linked up with YouTube. So we are going to be posting this replay to our YouTube, and the link will be available in the Coven community shortly. So if anybody missed it, you'll be able to rewatch it. Definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel, because HQ is now on YouTube to make it easier for us to broadcast these things and offer you guys replays and all of that good stuff. But right now, Antonio and everybody are in the shop mingling and eating. I want to give a big shout out and a thank you to our shop witch Blaze, who is here today, for making fantastic aloo curry puff pastries and chutneys. We had Christina Casado from Brunch at Zion's make blueberry and lavender cupcakes and blueberry and lemon poppy muffins. We have tea from Muddy River Conjure and Conti's Italian Bakery pastries from there here in the Bronx. So shout out to everybody who has made this event so special. Shout out to Wiser Books and Gia over at Wiser for making sure we had books in time. And thank you, of course, most importantly, to Antonio Pagliarulo for being our special feature. And a thank you to his husband, Mike, who has been in the background being so helpful, making sure that everybody knew about this. We have a packed house because of them. So thank you to everyone, and thank you to you guys, Coven community members, for tuning in and making this extra special. Your questions were fantastic. And yeah, folks are gonna start filing into this room right over here as soon as Antonio gets himself a snack and gets comfortable. People who are getting their book signed are going to come right over here and get their book signed. And then we've got a couple of chairs for folks who had private chat in-person tickets because Antonio is going to actually be giving folks some brief evil eye readings. So very excited. We still have an hour or so more of this event going on, but the private chat portion is over. So we're going to end the live stream. And I just want to say thank you guys so much again for tuning in. We will be doing this a lot more. This is so fun to be able to broadcast the events happening in the shop to the world. So So thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the replay on YouTube, and we will see all of you guys very soon. Bye. Blessed be.